Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. That would have been interesting if you prop swap that two-leg parlay that the guy won $579,000. I wonder what you could have prop swapped that thing for. Like overtime comes and you post that thing on PropSwap. Somebody could have bought that from you for what, like $300,000, $700,000? I don't know. What's going on, Geoff Mosher?
What's up, Mike? How you doing?
Did you get a lot of snow where you are?
I got about 8 to 10.
Okay, not too bad.
Now, what about you? I heard schools were off today. Is that like in some areas? What's up with that?
Good question.
Is that a rant that you're trying to save yourself from going on right now?
I had that rant on Thursday when they canceled the entire weekend before it even got to Friday. I mean, it was, I don't know. Yeah, schools were. If this thing, because they were saying the way that the path of the storm was going, that we caught the western end of it. If this thing had drifted more west, we could have gotten anywhere between 25 and 35 inches of snow. Yeah.
If that was the case, I think, Mike, they would have canceled life as we know it at that point.
Well,
right?
See, Friday night, I was like debating like whether we should go out. People were talking about the snow coming, and a lot of people bailed on meeting us out because of the snow. And of course, we went. Right. We enjoyed ourselves, and it was fine. There was not a problem. We got there safely and got home safely. Cherish the thought. And
how about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I get it. Like kids on a bus, they don't like to put buses out there in like this type of weather. But I just don't understand the timing. That's all. The timing of the decisions is what bothers me.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. I can understand that. Appreciate it.
And you have kids though, so do you like being notified like the night before that they're going to cancel, even before anything happens, and then you wake up the next day and like, oh my God, they should have just had school.
Well, I mean, listen, if they're going to cancel it, I may have mixed reactions on that, but I'd rather be notified, the day or night before instead of the morning of. Although that's, now that I think about it, it's kind of the old school way we had it. Like we had to wake up that morning and listen to AM radio and have them go over 500 high schools or whatever schools before they got to ours. So I suppose, but I mean, in this day and age with all the availability to reach people faster.
Yeah. Well, yeah, some of the schools were canceled today. I saw a lot of parents complaining about it last night that they had announced last night that they were already canceled today. I guess
that part I just didn't get. Like what you got the whole weekend. I know some people work on the weekends and things like that, but I mean, as far as the cities, they have all weekend to plow and do what they can do in the towns.
I said, I mean, you've been to my house, right?
Yeah.
I live on like a remote little side street. If that thing was cleared, something tells me the main thoroughfares everywhere were clear. Like if they got to my street, they got to where you need to go to get to your school.
I would agree with that.
All right, Geoff Mosher, I want to ask you this. There were 2 games yesterday, 4 teams that played. If similar, if Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman are watching that game together, what's their takeaway from watching those 4 teams play?
That's a good question. I don't think like Jeffrey and Howie, so I'm not sure. I imagine that at the end of the day, they're going to look at these games and think that neither of these games was one-sided. Anybody could have won both of those games, right? And so you got tremendous play out of Joe Burrow. In fact, I think the Kansas City Chiefs lost that game. I thought Mahomes played very recklessly in the second half, and then going into the break where he threw the ball to Hill with time running out, and he didn't get in the end zone. So there was reckless play there. Because I still think the Chiefs are the better team. I think if they play that game 10 times, and I realize that the Chiefs lost the regular season game to Cincinnati too. Maybe I'm not giving Cincinnati enough respect, but I do think the Chiefs are the better overall team. They just blew it in the end. I think Patrick kind of reverted back to some of like last year's Super Bowl where if he couldn't make an immediate play and he got stuck there, he just danced around too much and spun around and tried to be Russell Wilson instead of throwing the ball away. So I thought he played recklessly. And then obviously the San Francisco LA game, I mean, what are we saying about that game if I hope not to butcher this name, but if Jaquiski Tart makes that interception, right, San Francisco wins that game, possibly. But the bottom line is, I mean, the quarterback played really well, Stafford, and the wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, was fantastic, and Beckham was good too. And their defense, their front seven, the Rams, is really good. These are two pretty good teams. Obviously, they're going to play for the Super Bowl, but I don't know what long-term conclusion you would draw. I mean, you would just look at 4 teams and say 3 of them got really good quarterbacks. The other one had a great running game and defense, but when they needed to make a play in the clutch, the quarterback did not play very well.
Yeah, I mean, there's like Burrow. I mean, as well, like I love Burrow. I'm not like I would take Burrow in a heartbeat and say I'm good and I'm thrilled to death. If you looked at his numbers and I told you, hey, these are Jalen Hurts' numbers, you would say he stinks, he's got to go. I mean, he didn't have a great statistical game yesterday. He made some big plays, like with his legs, keeping drives alive, but they really ran the game out. I mean, Mixon had some big runs late in that game, but I thought their defense won them that game yesterday. In the second half, they gave up 3 points. They had 2 interceptions. They had the big sack. They caused the fumble. Like, their defense is getting shortchanged because Burrow's just such a likable guy.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. Big interception, obviously, in overtime, too. Helped slip the field. So
and Eli
Burrow
Apple
had some
dropped one.
Eli
Apple dropped an interception. If he intercepts that ball, they'd probably win that game in regulation.
There were like 3 dropped interceptions between Tart, Apple, and I think Jalen Ramsey dropped one yesterday as well. So, yeah, I agree with you, but there were just too many times that I saw Patrick Mahomes hold on to the ball for 5 to 10 seconds. Now, if that means that the Bengals were doing an amazing job in the secondary of plastering wide receivers or plastering Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman, then God bless them, because I've never seen anybody be able to do that. I don't know what was going on. I'd love to see the All-22 when it finally comes out. I have a feeling it's going to reflect on what I said, that, yeah, you can tip your cap to the Bengals. They made plays, but I just think Patrick played really recklessly for how far he's into the league now and for who he is and what he's accomplished. Again, I look forward to seeing the tape there. I'm sure Cincinnati did some good things, but that really surprised me to see how. Did you see his first half numbers compared to his second half numbers?
Yeah, I mean, he was terrible in the second half.
You can't find. It's like 2 different players. It's like comparing, like Tom Brady and Luke Falk.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's crazy.
There's so much here because I would love Burrow. We all want Mahomes, right? We would take those guys easily. Now, I don't know what people think about Stafford. I'm not the biggest Stafford guy in the world. I don't think they won the game because Matt Stafford was their quarterback. Their defense was great yesterday. Jimmy Garoppolo struggled in the fourth quarter. I can't sit here and say the Rams won because they've been to this game before with Jared Goff. I mean, Stafford went to a team that's really been here before. So I can't say they won because Matt Stafford was elite or great. I think part of it is like, here's what I think that the listeners and the fans have to come to terms with, whatever team you're a fan of. There's only so many guys that you would say, that's the guy I want. You have to understand that if you can't get that guy, there are other avenues you have to go down to try to build your team. You can't perpetually keep chasing a guy that doesn't exist. That's how you become the Bengals or the Lions or these teams that can't get out of their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's an argument to be made that you shouldn't. Well, I would take what you're saying and say you shouldn't perpetually chase mediocrity, but you should perpetually chase a guy like Joe Burrow, a guy like even Matthew Stafford. I'll put him up there because you can clearly win games and go to a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford.
Well,
you should perpetually.
It's interesting, Moshe, because the show before me today, Bart and Han. So Han's saying that you're a Jets fan, that game should give you hope. If you're a Lions fan, they won 2 games, then they won 4 games. If you were a Bengals fan last year, right, Moshe? You didn't watch the AFC Championship weekend or the divisional round and say, man, we're right where those teams are. We are just right where these teams. No, you think you're far away. So you can have 4 wins and watch the games and feel that you are so far away from what you're watching. And here, the Bengals were not that far away from what we were watching. But the point is, he's like, well, you have the quarterback. But my point was, the Lions had the quarterback. He's in the Super Bowl. So he's obviously good enough to get to the Super Bowl, but just having that quarterback isn't enough. Like, Matthew Stafford couldn't even win a playoff game, let alone get his team to the Super Bowl.
I would say that having a great quarterback, elite quarterback, really good, whatever you want to put Stafford in, upper echelon quarterback, doesn't guarantee you a spot in the Super Bowl. However, it gives you a much better chance of getting there than not having a great quarterback.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day,
it's the best road.
Wins,
it's the best path to consistent success is having the guy.
Correct. Having the guy. Now, Burrow, I know the Bengals were 4-11. No, whatever they were.
4-11-1. They tied Philadelphia.
Just like the Eagles, right. So, but he missed, half the season because he tore his ACL like in November. What was their record? Do you remember with Burrow? Because you could clearly tell, even in that Eagles game where he took hit after hit after hit and made some plays, you could clearly tell he was a good quarterback in the making. Now, he's gotten pretty far pretty fast here. I don't know if everybody saw it, but you knew that the Bengals, as long as they didn't screw it up,
they were
pretty good.
They were 2-7-1 with him last year.
2-7-1, yeah. But you saw he had something go. He had it going with the T. Higgins.
Yep.
And he was playing fairly well, statistically. So you could see he was going to be a pretty good quarterback.
There's no doubt. Right. But Burrow, I don't know, is Burrow that much more special than some of these other guys? You know what I'm saying? So is Burrow now in that category of, hey, the Bengals are just perpetually going to be good because they now have Joe Burrow? Because he could overcome. Could overcome not having a great offensive line and maybe not having these other parts. Where Daniel Jones can't overcome that. Daniel Jones might be great if he's on a team that has a good offensive line. We have no idea. He plays on a team, the line stinks, and he's not good enough to overcome that.
That's correct. Yeah, obviously what Joe Burrow has are the traits you look for in that kind of upper echelon guy, the size, the arm. He's got mobility even more so than I even realized. I mean, he made some special plays. I think it's going to be difficult, as good as he is, for them to kind of be like a dynasty type team or a team that's always there, because they play in one of the toughest divisions with two other teams that are known for being really good year in and year out. And every once in a while, the Ravens didn't make the playoffs this year. They had a lot of injuries, but the Ravens are still the Ravens, and the Steelers, even with the change that they're undergoing, I think are still going to be the Steelers until they prove me otherwise. So it'll be fascinating to see if the Bengals are for real for a while, or flash in the pan, or if they get to one Super Bowl, but then, like Flacco did with the Ravens, but then, can't go back. So it's in his best interest to win it now, because you just never know if he's going to be able to make it back.
I look at, when I'm looking Andy, Howie Roseman, Jeff Lurie, you're watching that game yesterday, and, hey, I have a quarterback that's not an elite. Is there a path to get one? I don't know how you feel about how realistic it is for them to get a elite level quarterback this offseason via trade. I don't think you're drafting one this year. I think you could draft a guy. I don't think he's going to be an elite player. That said, if I'm them and I'm saying I have this quarterback, this is where I'm at now. What did San Francisco had? That Fred Warner's unbelievable, by the way. At what point do you say, what he does for their defense, we have to have? I have to find one of those guys, because they refuse to go linebacker. But how do you watch that game and not say, wow, look what he does to a team? And he single-handedly keeps them in that game yesterday almost.
Yeah, unfortunately, you ask what Jeffrey and Howie are thinking. They're probably thinking, Mike, that Fred Warner is one of the best, linebackers in the game. And he was, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember where he was picked. He was certainly not a first-round pick. He was a third-round pick, which is where the Eagles got Jordan Howard a couple of years ago, where they got Davion Taylor, who they're hoping becomes the player for them. So I imagine that they're thinking, we just got to hit better on the third-round pick that we use on a linebacker, and surround him with great players like they do there in San Francisco, and not use a first-round pick on a linebacker. I imagine that would just bolster their thinking, to be honest.
Yeah, it's such a there's so many things I'm watching that game yesterday, and I'm like, hey, look, I don't want to say you're stuck with Hurts, but that's where you are. This is your guy right now. The guy goes back and forth with me on Twitter because I said I'm rolling with Hurts for another year. I didn't say I'm thrilled about it, but my point is, what's
your alternative?
What's my alternative? Give me an alternative, and I'm all ears. I am willing to listen. And, of course, they give me the Watsons and the Wilsons and the Rodgers. Have you heard any indication that those players or the Eagles have interest there? Is there any mutual interest?
Well, yeah, I mean, Watson, of course, it's been there.
Right, he has a no-trade
Obviously,
clause.
he has a no-trade clause, and he has a huge legal issue that's over a year old, or about to be a year old now, that has seemingly not reached anything close to its end. So that's a big obstacle. Russell Wilson, you know the Eagles love Russell Wilson. They've made that intention pretty clear. But as of right now, as we sit here today, I haven't heard anything about Russell Wilson demanding out, and I think he also has a no-trade clause. And the only thing we have heard with Russ is that he does have some preferred destinations he'd like to go if he could, and the Eagles were not on that list. So, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I agree with you that the door number one being that veteran elite quarterback, not as open as door number two, which is sticking with Jalen Hurts. But I do think that they will draft a quarterback, and I don't think they're going to package their picks and move up into the top 5. I think that they'll probably draft a quarterback sometime day 2 or 3. And it'll be interesting to see what happens from there, because Jalen Hurts has performed to a certain level as a second-round pick.
What about Rodgers? Because you get the Vegas odds. The Eagles have like the 4th best odds to get Rodgers. Is that just because?
Really?
Well, I mean, you got to keep in mind Vegas is a business. They know Philadelphia fans are irrational. So you put odds at 4-1 that he's going to go there. What are they going to do? They're going to bet on him so they can clean up when he doesn't go there.
Yeah, I have no inside information on this. I tend to think he's going to stay in Green Bay. So, I mean, we'll see if he goes. I could see him going to, obviously Denver has been rumored and Pittsburgh. But the thing is, does he want to go to the AFC and have to duke it out with, 4 really good quarterbacks there, and Mahomes and Burrow and Herbert? And
well, right. If you're looking around, you're a quarterback and you have a movement opportunity, do you look at Philadelphia and say you're in the NFC? That makes you attractive based on the quarterback situation in both conferences.
Right. I mean, if anything, if Aaron Rodgers goes to the AFC and you're the Eagles, you might really, really try extra hard to then try to get Russell Wilson, or if Deshaun Watson's legal issues are cleared and not what they are purported to be, take a run at him, because then all of a sudden you're probably looking at the rest of the NFC thinking, we have the best or second best quarterback in the NFC.
So what's more important then in the offseason? Do whatever you can to find the avenue to get a better quarterback, or hit on your draft choices?
Yeah, I mean, I personally always feel like you should be in relentless pursuit of an elite quarterback. I mean, look, you could say Tampa Bay had a lot of holes before Brady got there, which they did, and they were a pretty good team, but they were certainly, their record didn't suggest it. And then Brady got there, and everything came together, of course, with the elite quarterback. And I do think that you can get people say you have to give up all your 3 first-round picks. Why? Who else has 3 first-round picks to give? Nobody. So who are you competing against? Now, if somebody's willing to offer 2 first-round picks in a future, then you, as the Eagles, can offer 2 of your first-round picks in a future, or you can offer a player that might sweeten a deal. So you have 10 picks this draft. If you have to get rid of 2 because you're getting an elite quarterback, you still have free agency and 8 other picks to help yourself. You still have young players that you drafted in the last 2 years that you're hoping come into their own. So, and again, the NFC is not looking very strong outside of the Rams, and we'll see who they can and can't keep this offseason.
Would you consider the Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, like that level? Would you give up a first-rounder to be in play with that level of quarterback?
Probably not, because then are you in relentless pursuit of an elite quarterback, or are you just trying to pursue someone you might think is better than what you've got, but then giving up valuable asset for it?
Yeah.
That's something you would have to kind of. That's going to be a subjective thing anyway. How much better are you with Derek Carr than you are with Jalen Hurts? I think you're better. You're a better passing offense, certainly, but are you good enough? Is he that kind of guy that, like Russ or Deshaun Watson or a top 5 guy, can get you to where you want to go? That's a question that you would have to ask within the confines of your building.
Geoff Mosher, couple quick Eagles notes here. Ian Cunningham is in Chicago now. He's the new assistant general manager. Now, a lot of people in our listening audience probably don't know who we're talking about. He was in the Philadelphia Eagles front office. He's no longer there. Is that a big loss, big blow?
Well, he was a well-respected scout. He's one of those guys that Jeffrey Lurie talked about when Jeffrey said he had, 4 or 5 potential GMs in the building. The good thing that the Eagles do is, and very interesting and rare, if you'll notice, his title was Director of Player Personnel. He was actually the co-director of Player Personnel with Brandon Brown, who was the executive that interviewed out in Minnesota for their GM job. So he's basically a guy who came up through the Ravens, came over with Joe Douglas, and was immediately the Eagles director of college scouting, and then was elevated last year to player personnel. Now, the college scouting that he did, they also have a senior director of college scouting. His name is Anthony Patch. He's been with the organization for 20 years. So the point is, they're losing a guy, but they've sort of had in-house guys already working with him and doing similar jobs as far as presiding over this college scouting department and presiding over the player development or player personnel department. So I don't think they feel like, oh man, we got to run out and get a guy to replace him. Now they always could just to add, but they have enough people in-house who do similar jobs that they're comfortable with, that it's not one of those losses that they think, oh man, what are we going to do now? More interesting, Mike, is the fact that he gets a job. Catherine Rage, Brandon Brown get interviews, but the number one person underneath Howie Roseman is Andy Weidel, and he hasn't gotten any looks at all. It's kind of interesting.
Well, and it's another example of teams, like it or not, think Philadelphia does a good job in their front office because they keep interviewing and coming after guys and girls in the Eagles front office. I mean, how many guys around the league are from the, I don't know, do you want to call it the Howie Roseman tree?
Probably more so from the Eagles, like Andy Joe Banner tree than the Howie tree.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to say Andrew Berry's from the Howie tree, I feel like that's cheating. I mean, he was there for, a year.
Okay, from the Lurie front office years.
So Jason Light is the general manager of Tampa Bay. So he came from the Eagles. I'm trying to think. There are a couple others who just names aren't jumping out at me right now, but yeah, most of them came up through Joe.
Yeah, Grigson. He was in Indy.
Who's that?
Grigson
Rod
was
Grigson,
in Indy.
right? Ryan Grigson, right. Yep. He's not there anymore. But
Joe Douglas.
Oh, Joe Douglas with the Jets. That's definitely a Howie tree guy.
Yep. You mentioned Andrew Berry. He is in Cleveland.
Yes.
And now, Cunningham.
Ian Cunningham as the AGM.
I think there's others that we're forgetting. Who's in Kansas City with Andy? Anybody?
Oh, Brett Veach. There you go. I'm sorry. You're right. That's who I couldn't think of. Brett Veach was he's like an Andy / Joe, but really an Andy guy. Yeah.
Real quick, John Gannon got a second interview in Houston. He's a finalist there. I guess it's between him and Josh McCown.
Or you. I mean, listen, that job it's going to be tough for them. I would think. Maybe they go hire Flores. I don't know, but you would think that a coach who really wants to stick around and be able to win is looking at Houston a little sideways. Like maybe I'll go next year. Hopefully next year's cycle will be better for me because that organization is a big mess right now. I know it's 1 of 32, so that's why it might go to a guy like a Gannon or McCown who's never coached in the NFL at any position. And maybe it'll wind up working in the end, but right now that organization's not well regarded.
No. All right, there you go. For more, go to Inside the Birds. Check out the podcast where they talk more about the coaching staff moves. Something else in the coaching staff. Am I forgetting somebody? Wasn't there somebody interviewing for an offensive coordinator job somewhere?
Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach, was a candidate for the
Bears.
Where did Eberflus go? No, Bears, I believe.
It was right the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe they've already settled on somebody else, if I'm not mistaken. So
I like Eberflus was a popular guy today. He says, I'm not going to call plays. It's too much responsibility. The head coach should be in charge of everything, not focus on one. That won some points over for me.
Yeah, that was interesting because also in the New York Giants press conference, their general manager, Shane, who's Brian Shane, is it, I think, said that he's hoping that Brian Daboll will also be the CEO type of head coach instead of a play caller. And Brian Daboll said, well, maybe I might consider that if I bring in a good play caller. But Brian Daboll also noticed that the two teams in the Super Bowl right now, their coaches call plays.
Yeah.
So
All right, Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, Football at 4, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mosher, good stuff, buddy.
All right, Mikey, take care.
All right, he'll be back on Friday's show. More Geoff Mosher for Football at 4. We'll talk to Andrew DeCecco tomorrow. We'll take a look at the championship